morning and welcome to Morning Movie News. Now, Fox has been trying to limit the news about their upcoming Fantastic Four reboot, but that hasn't stopped Toby Kebbell from doing his pals at Collider a major solid by giving them a colossal scoop about the film. And that's how his Victor Von Doom will differ from the one we've come to know pretty well over the decades in the comics, the animated versions, and of course the first ill-fated attempt to adapt the property to the silver screen. So, how is this Victor Von Doom different? Well, first of all, he's not named Victor Von Doom. His name is, Victor Domashev, so he's still Eastern European, but he's a programmer, which I think is a very interesting and telling change to the character. First off, that's something that's been, I think, overused a little bit in Hollywood and seems very 90s, the hacker identity. It's something that even they used in the recent 24 in London special, when they tried to bring that show back to make it seem hip and current. But I think, again, the idea of a hacker persona is a little dated. And I think the only way to make it seem current is if you bring in the parallels to Julian Assange and Edward Snowden. And that's an interesting way to go with the character because I think that's something that we're trying to explore in movies, but it hasn't been done successfully yet. I think that, for instance, the Fifth Estate film about Julian Assange wasn't particularly well done. So I think there's something interesting to be discovered there, and maybe Black Hat, by the way, coming out from Michael Mann and Chris Hemsworth will do a better job with this new identity for the hacker in today's world. But then maybe they won't, and Dr. Doom or this new Doom, just Doom, can maybe do something interesting with that kind of commentary here in Fantastic Four, and it certainly would add something new to the film and the property overall. But what I don't get about it, what just seems weird to me, is that I don't understand if he's a programmer and he's going to be that kind of an activist. What's the point in covering his body like in that burn victim material that we've seen in the leaked photos for the character? And why would a computer programmer who calls himself Doom wear like a hooded cape? It's like you don't see Edward Snowden making these videos and talking to 60 Minutes, hiding behind a mask and a cape. I mean, maybe that would make for better television. Maybe that would make Edward Snowden more of a cultural touchstone and something of a modern-day comic book character, and so maybe that's where they feel this whole idea needs to go. But I don't see how the aspects of the injury that he gets through becoming a Fantastic Four villain plays into his goals as a villain or just an activist. I think it's very important to see a correlation there. The original Doom, there's a horrible explosion or something goes wrong, an accident, and his face is horribly scarred, and that's why he takes to wearing the mask. And it plays into the character's ego, also that he is royalty. He comes from, he's the head of Latveria. So there's a sense of, vanity there and, having to maintain an image. And also Doom, to me, the most interesting thing about Doom is that he is someone who's at war within between science and magic. He comes from a line of gypsies, and so that's a big part of his persona as well. Maybe they can keep that going. Maybe Victor Domashev also comes from a long line of gypsies. And he's like, I've been doing hacking all this time when I could have been casting spells and wearing my family's ancestral cape. So maybe that's the direction it will go in. But there's something else that Toby Kebbell said about the film which interested me, but makes me again wonder about certain aspects that we've seen leak about the movie. And this is why Fantastic Four is saying they're playing it so close to the vest, is because it's so different. It needs to be presented properly as so as not to turn you off. And it's like, wow, that's a very thin line you've made for yourself to walk there, Fox. Let's see if you can do it. So Toby Kebbell said that the film, in line with Chronicle, which Josh Trank directed and got him this gig, this is going to be very low budget and ultra real. And I could see that working out because I think a lot of people, including myself, sparked to Christopher Nolan's version of Batman because it was so realistic. And it seemed low budget. I mean, of course, those were expensive movies to make, but there weren't a lot of flashy visual effects. Everything seemed real. And if Josh Trank can achieve that with the Fantastic Four, that could be very interesting. Now, this gets into the whole discussion as to whether or not the Fantastic Four is the right property for this kind of treatment. Part of me feels that maybe Josh Trank should make a more realistic superhero movie, apply what he did with Chronicle to a big comic book property, but the Fantastic Four isn't that property. I mean, you're talking about a team that eventually has the Baxter Building, they're supposed to be, beacons of hope and science. I think they're almost like what Marvel has accomplished with Iron Man over for what Fox could do. And science has proven quite popular these days. Iron Man, of course, obviously. Black Panther will be probably heavily based in science to some degree. Ant-Man. And then Big Hero 6 is a science-heavy movie. So to take that aspect away from the Fantastic Four when that seems to be what's popular right now, I think is a very risky move. But I'm curious, and also I have to say, and this is going to play into our second story here, is do you think the Fantastic Four is really that sacred of a property? Is it something you really can't mess with? Because let's face it, while they are really the first family of Marvel Comics, they've become extremely dated. And I think it's partially because of the family metaphor for the team. I think it's hard to make a family sexy. And I wish they pushed the characters a little bit more. I think some of the most interesting aspects are their children. And also, for instance, everybody likes the Invisible Woman's flirtation with Namor. You know, I don't think you can have a happy family just like you can't have a happy marriage and things that are supposed to be long-going entertainment, TV show, movie series, comic book, etc., and still be compelling to your audience. I mean, maybe it can be done, but it's very difficult. You have to find a way to put drama in there somewhere. And I think that's hurt the Fantastic Four. And, we've talked about even on this show that the Marvel is, kind of deciding to maybe put the Fantastic Four on hold so they don't promote it for Fox, etc. with the comic. And the question is anyone going to really miss the Fantastic Four comic? Does it sell any issues? I think this is a property that desperately needs change. And so I'm all for what Josh Trank is trying to do, but I'm just worried that he's not making the extra effort to make sure that it's organic and that the decisions still stem from where the characters are supposed to be rooted. And that's what I want to discuss in the second story with DC's movies. Now, there was a lot of news yesterday or over the weekend about a big discovery on the set of Batman v Superman. And they had some cool shots of Superman, being hoisted around wires to get ready for flying sequences, and I think that's awesome. I love when Superman hovers. I think that's really cool. But they talked about the fact there was a sign somewhere for a Kahina double. And Kahina is a member of the Others, which is the superhero team they've decided to give Aquaman in the New 52. It's when they introduced the Others, by the way, into the Aquaman solo title, which I'd been quite enjoying up until that point. I have to say, I stopped reading it after a few issues because I was like, I don't want to watch this team book. I don't need another team book. And it's not even based on the sea, where Aquaman comes from. This team consists of different types of characters from all over the DCU with different backgrounds. Like, I believe Man of War is one of them. There's like a jungle girl, like a jungle lady who's part of the team. And you're just like, isn't this the adventures of Mira and Arthur out of their lighthouse and deciding if this half-human man can truly rule Atlantis? That's what I always thought the story was, but people at DC with this New 52 decided to try and, I don't know, make it more sexy. So with the idea of a Kahina double having a dressing room on the set of Batman v Superman, people are wondering if perhaps the Others will make a cameo here along with Aquaman, and then the Aquaman movie, which is slated to come out with Jason Momoa, of course, will be with the Others. I think this is a very big mistake, and I am really perplexed as to why, whenever they decide to adapt DC characters for the movies, they're going with these new 52 versions. I can understand the corporate synergy, but it's frustrating to me that they're not taking into account that the New 52 is not incredibly popular. There's buzz as we speak about maybe doing away with it. And also, the New 52 versions of these characters, while giving a boost, I think, to the comic book industry as a whole when they were first introduced, don't speak to the properties of these characters that made DC Comics so iconic and popular over the years. And with characters, by the way, that have been, up until the movies leveled out the playing ground, more popular and more well-known with the mainstream than Marvel characters. I mean, these characters, they work. There are certain aspects of them that you just really shouldn't mess with. So I just don't understand why. I can understand why the executives would be like, okay, well, who's Aquaman? Who's Harley Quinn? And then, because they don't know anything about the comics. And so someone from the DC team is apparently saying, oh, well, here's the comic. And they're not giving them the bundle, which is the character throughout the character's history and all their classic iconic stories. But it seems to me they're just giving them the most recent issues of the New 52 to push the New 52 agenda. And I think that it's very selfish and short-sighted and a little egotistical for the powers at DC to want the New 52 that they dreamed up to succeed so badly that they're imposing it on the films. I don't think that's an appropriate idea at all, and I think that they should be giving, as I said, the entire package to the the creative talent at DC that's working on these films to adapt the character best for the silver screen as possible. And it just shows that the people making the movies over at DC aren't comic book fans. And that's why this is going to actually play into our viewer question about why Kevin Feige is so important to the MCU. So I'm just curious to what you guys think. With Harley Quinn, the way she's being depicted with, the potential casting of Margot Robbie, bringing in the others into the Aquaman, this Aquaman version in the movies. Do you think this is a good idea? Are you like, yes, I love the New 52 comics. I'm so glad to see them on the silver screen. Are you like, I'm enjoying the New 52 comics, but I think this is, it's a risky move and I would prefer for you to do something that's that stands on a sturdier foundation. Or are you like, I'm not such a big fan of the New 52 either, and I can't believe I'm going to have to now be forced to watch them on the silver screen. Maybe I won't watch them just like I don't read the comics. I'm curious to your thoughts on this and what direction you think DC should be going in. All right, so the third story, we're going to take a little detour because I think this is important, and this is a great opportunity that I discovered over the weekend that I think a number of you might want to take advantage of. Now, I get asked a number of times about screenwriting. What's the best way to break into screenwriting? What's a good way to find out how to best write a script, etc. And screenwriting is a very exciting part of the business. It's the beginning when an idea starts to become a movie. And as we all know, it's very important to the movie making process. We wish that some movies out there had better scripts. So the best way to combat that is to get a whole new group of screenwriters into Hollywood that care about movies, etc. Now, of course, you'll have to deal with producers who don't care as much about the script, but it's a start. So what's this opportunity? Well, you might have heard of the Blacklist. We've discussed it here before, and it's a list that's been around Hollywood for a long time of the best unproduced screenplays. And once a movie makes it onto the Blacklist, it usually tends to get some attention from the powers that be in Hollywood because they're always looking for a new property to bring to the silver screen. Hollywood is always desperate for ideas, even though it might not seem that way. And so later on, years later, you'll often see a movie come out and everyone will say, including me and my open for it, that this was on the Blacklist. So it's a very prestigious list. Now, as we get into a more digital age, you're seeing not only new companies emerge, but the middleman being taken out. In this case, it's agents and managers, perhaps, because the Blacklist is trying to develop it into something that puts screenwriters together with producers and is a database for great scripts. So how can this involve you? Now, obviously, people who are already members of the Screenwriting Guild, the Writers Guild of America, they get a discount to participate in this, and their scripts can be on the database for free, whenever any development executive decides to comb through it. But now they're offering and they're opening this up to the general public, aspiring screenwriters, and this is where things get very exciting. Now, I want to tell you, don't just jump over to the Blacklist right now and enter a script. Once your name goes on there, if you get a better script on there eventually, you don't want any readers or development executives seeing the script and the script title in your name and going, well, I read something from them before, I didn't like it that much. So just stay back from that a little bit. Make sure you have a good script before you consider taking advantage of this opportunity. All right, so what's the opportunity? Well, and you have to pay for this. So that's another way they're making sure that you are really, well-intentioned about this and you're serious about being a screenwriter, okay? So, and they have two great things that they'll offer you. For $50, you can submit your script and they will give you an evaluation on it. That is extremely valuable. That means they'll have script readers, and Hollywood, a script reader is someone who reads scripts for development executives and producers and comes up with notes. It's been in the process a long time. If you go back and you watch Sunset Boulevard, there's a script reader in the movie that's one of the characters. And she wants to, of course, build her own career in Hollywood, but she starts out as a script reader. And she comes up with coverage. It's called coverage, and it's just basically a one-page report card on the script for the producer to read through quickly and decide if they would then like to read the script. And they talk about not just whether or not the script is any good, but if it has any potential business-wise. So for $50, they will give you back a valuation on your script. They will have professional script readers read it and give you feedback. So I think that's definitely worth $50. Then, if you want your script to be considered for the Blacklist, it has to get a score of 8 or higher. And if it does from the script readers, it will go out in the bundle, or the email to all of the producers and development executives that subscribe to the Blacklist that are looking for scripts. So I think that's incredibly valuable. Then also, it costs $25 a script to keep it active on the site each month. So this is an investment, But I can vouch for this organization. They're very well respected. I don't know how well they're doing right now with these idea of helping aspiring screenwriters, but the reason this was in the news and came to my attention is because I went to the site because they talked about the fact that Disney had made a major deal with the Blacklist to actively search their database of talent of screenwriters for Disney movies, for the Disney think tank of screenwriters, and a lot of them go on to work on Marvel properties. So I think the Blacklist is a great starting place, but just make sure you're ready to start. Take the extra time to get that script to the best that you feel you can get it to be, and then find out what the Blacklist has to say. So I put a link down below in the video description as to the actual website. It's not spelled The Blacklist, and if you search for The Blacklist, you'll just get a whole bunch of stuff for the NBC show with James Spader. All right, so let's get on to that viewer question. This comes from Nicholas Yanes, and he sent me an article from IO9 talking about how Joss Whedon's contract is up for renewal and probably won't be renewed because they'll be making Marvel movies for so long at this point. Although I always feel, with the exception of Christopher Nolan, that there's a check out there big enough to keep somebody involved in a property. Although I think Christopher Nolan, after Interstellar, might be regretting walking away from comic book movies. I think he underestimated how much that was his base in terms of his fans. So don't be surprised if maybe he goes back, or maybe goes to James Bond. If Sam Mendes doesn't want to do the next one after the upcoming James Bond film, I know Christopher Nolan really wants to make a James Bond movie, so that would be a good use of his time. But anyway, so IO9 says, will Whedon stay? How important is it that he stays? So Nicholas Yanes on Twitter forwarded me this article and said, Grace, who do you think is more important, Kevin Feige or Joss Whedon? And I can tell you without a doubt, I think it's Kevin Feige. But with all due respect to Joss Whedon, what he's contributed to the MCU is definitely valuable. The Avengers are fantastic, and it's well known that he's done a lot of work on scripts for the Marvel Cinematic Universe. First Avenger. I'll put a link to this IO9 article as well in the video description. But he's done script work on the First Avenger, Thor: The Dark World, which I think a lot of us would agree he couldn't quite save, and he's, I think, done a lot to bring talent in. It was his idea to bring in James Gunn and to make it, to allow James Gunn to put his own personal stamp on the property, and I think that's very valuable. But I think Kevin Feige lets talent be talent as well. And I think that Kevin Feige, the reason he's important is because he's the main architect of everything here. He's the one who has the long-term vision. And in a town, Hollywood, which is usually more concerned with the sprint than the marathon, that's really important. And I've often said, and I think a number of people agree with me at this point, that what DC is missing is their own Kevin Feige. What Fox is missing is their own Kevin Feige. It was supposed to be Mark Miller, but Mark Miller, of course, is infinitely more interested in his own projects. He's not going to focus as much as he needs to on Fox's Marvel films. The person who has this job needs to love it, and that has to be their end goal, and they have to be somebody who says, you know what, I'd be content if my life's work were to shape this universe, this cinematic universe. And for Kevin Feige, I think it's definitely what he wants to do, and I think he's doing a very good job. Now, as I said with the New 52, it's unfortunate that only the New 52 characters are being presented to the executives over at DC, at Warner Brothers from the DC executives. And Kevin Feige is really important because he's a comic book fan. He grew up on Marvel Comics. He's always said, I love these personally. I'm a comic book reader. And because of that, he understands not only the history of each character that he adapts and brings to the silver screen, but that different versions of the character are beloved by different fan bases. And I think he does a really good job boiling that down to the heart of the character and presenting that in the movies. Usually something, there have been a few missteps, but overall it's something that everyone can get behind. And he's also very good at finding the right talent to do something new and exciting with the character to also make it seem fresh. So I think he's a very good, eye for talent as well. He's the one who's approving Joss Whedon's choices. He's bringing in other people. And then, of course, he also realizes the importance of Robert Downey Jr. Being a part of the cinematic universe. And that's a point that we could argue, and we'll see how damaging that might be in the long run. But so far, so good. And he's also bringing in really important storylines. The Civil War, which I think is a really smart idea. And then also think about it. He's able to reach back and remember the popular Infinity War comics and bring that in for the third and fourth Avengers. That's a really old school story. You have to know your stuff to not only remember that story, but have faith in it as something to be adapted. I think most executives, and even I would be concerned about it as someone who's not such a big fan of the older comics, the way they used to be told, I'm not a Silver Age or Golden Age fan, to have faith in that this will be something that can be adapted today and be popular. So I think it's really exciting, and I think Kevin Feige is the perfect person for the job. And Joss Whedon, his contributions are, of course, very valuable, but, he will leave, and I'm sure I have every bit of confidence that Kevin Feige will find someone new to step in and take over. And the only question I've had so far of who he's picked is Scott Derrickson for Doctor Strange, as you know. But we'll see. I hope Kevin Feige proves me wrong and that he really is such a wonderful Marvel mastermind. So I think he is definitely more important, but I'd be curious to what you think and why you think, if you agree with me, why you think Kevin Feige is more important or why you think Joss Whedon's more important. All right, so thank you so much, everybody, for tuning in today. I really appreciate it. Please write down below what you think of today's top 3 stories, the viewer question, anything you'd like to see covered tomorrow, and any questions that you might have. Thanks for watching.